Hello everyone, it is again early July, so I'm recording these videos now. Just the start of many, I guess, as I'm going to make little short 15-minute or so clips in case we need these. Anyway, so I want to start foundations today, but before I really start, I want to say lecturing. It is again, it's so much better when there's interaction with students, and so maybe these won't be needed, maybe these will just be sort of backup, and maybe we can at least have everybody in the same Google Classroom environment, which is better than this, but not as good as, I'm sorry, Google Classroom, the Google Meet. Better than this, but not quite as good, obviously, as being face-to-face in the classroom. So anyway, well, having said that, I will sometimes say, just so you know my style, I will go over some stories that may not always seem 100% related to the curriculum, but hopefully you'll be able to actually see where they are. And that's one of the things people generally like about the class is I try to tie it into real world events as much as possible. So I will try to give an example from my life or from something at Green Hope or something you maybe see in the news or something, and then tie it into this because I do believe that while we are learning content and curriculum and their standards, I think you're also learning about life while you're in school, which is one of the good parts of one of the best parts of being face to face is just the social interaction that you get. But for now, this will have to do. And so I just want you to understand that I will be sometimes telling some stories, and you'll be thinking I'm weird and crazy and whatever. But there is a point to them. I've been at this for a while now. And so hopefully it will make sense to you as we go. So anyway, this is where we're going to start today. Is just right at the beginning here. This is right underneath in the note, outlines the stuff we covered yesterday on a lead in popular democracy. And so just real quick, a lot of this is just sort of an intro into what we're really getting into. This class is U.S. government and politics, which means it really doesn't start until 1776 or even 1787. But 1776, declaring independence, anything before that would not be on the AP test. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to come back to the role of government here if we have time. I'm going to just run through some of these terms. When the founders get together and they make our Constitution, they have all this wealth of knowledge of all this stuff from the past. And you think for entertainment, they're not, on their phones and they're not, watching TV. They're just reading. And so they knew about the past. All these people did. And so they were well aware of all the different types of government that had been in place throughout the world's history, really. And so when you go through these different forms of government, just some names. A theocracy is a government where the rule is by divine authority. So someone who says they are God or claims that God told them to rule or something like that. A theocracy, that was more prevalent way back. Democracy, we think of that coming from ancient Greece. So democracy is ruled by the people. A republic is there are representatives that represent the people. Now, well, and let me go to the next one real quick. A monarchy is like a king or a queen or something like that. I'm not really going to get into that. So you have democracy and republic, which are sometimes used interchangeably, but think of democracy as ruled by all the people, or many of the people, most of the people, and regular people have a say. A republic means there's representatives. Now, if something is just a republic, what we don't know is how they got their position. So the United States is like for instance, if it's a republic, they could be representatives by hereditary. It could be appointed. They could be elected. We don't know how. Maybe they were awarded some position for donating money or something. So the United States is a democratic republic. So we are not a democracy, we're a democratic republic, and we mostly choose our representatives with some exceptions. So we know because we're a democratic republic that the way the representatives get in power is they are chosen by the people. And then dictatorships were one of the dominant forms of government in the 1900s. You think of World War I and World War II and Hitler and Mussolini and people like that, and then even throughout Central American countries as the 1900s went on, and many other places. So now, on the other side of this, the where I have here, let's see, I just messed up the format. Okay, there we go. Another way you can classify governments is all governments can be considered unitary, federal, or confederate. Now, you see that word Confederate, and that's been in the news more lately because of the Confederate monuments. But the Confederacy, the Confederate States of America, that was a type of government where all the power, or most of the power, rested in the states. And so they tried to be a separate country. And a Confederate country where it was like North Carolina had a lot of power and South Carolina had a lot of power, and there was no real power in the national government. It was the same type of government as we had under the Articles of Confederation. So the Articles of Confederation, the Confederacy, but that proved to be too weak, and so there are no Confederate governments in the world anymore. So Confederate governments is having the power lie in the local hands, not in the national government, and that's just too weak. The first one there, unitary government, you see that the beginning of that uni, so you know it's one. And so that is what most countries in the world are. Like over 90% of the countries are unitary governments, which means most of the power, well, I should say just about all the power, lies in the national government. The national government, same laws everywhere, same rules everywhere. So part of the United States being the great experiment is we are a federal government. And so a federal government is powerful national government, but also power in the hands of the states. And so we share power, and that's still a rare type of government in the world. We have a separate chapter we're going to do on federalism. It is a really controversial topic, federalism. It's led to lots of turmoil and conflict in U.S. history. So I personally sort of wish we were a unitary government as a citizen, so all the laws were the same everywhere I went. But as a government teacher, I'm glad we're a federal system because it causes more chaos and it's more messed up, and there's things you can argue about. Some states are different, do crazy things and whatever. And you can see with the reaction to the pandemic, to be honest. So sit there, and some states opened up maybe too early, and some places have had more of a sort of a lockdown mentality, and you can see where states are and stuff. So hopefully we're well past that by the time you guys are watching this. Anyway, so a federal government is shared powers with national and state. A unitary government is only national powers. Now, I listed some things here in the background, in the forefront or background of their minds. The founders, they knew all this stuff from history, and so I used to spend a lot of time on this. I'm not going to now. It just really isn't worth it. But in terms of when we make our Constitution, the founders were aware of the experiences of the Greeks with democracy, and the Romans with the republic, form of a republic. The Magna Carta was in England. They had it's the beginning of limited government, where they forced the king to basically give a little bit of say to some nobles when decision making was happening. And so you'll see where we had democracy and republic, and you have a little bit of starting to limit the power of the all-powerful monarch in England. And Magna Carta is the very beginning of the formation of Parliament. I mean, it's hard to even say it's the beginning of it because it's still so far off. In England, they had the English Petition of Right and the English Bill of Rights, and those things were they had a lot of things in them that we ended up copying later on, like right to bear arms, no quartering of soldiers in peacetime, no cruel and unusual punishment. Different things were parts of those that we took. When our founders get together, they look at the way the colonies were ruled while they were still under English control, but yet they had some laws in the different colonies and had a governor running each of the colonies and all that. Again, I won't get into some of that now, but the Second Continental Congress was actually, they declared independence, so they were the first governing body of the U.S. They said we're going to be independent, and they made the Articles of Confederation. And so the Articles of Confederation proved to be very weak. We'll look at that later. But state governments were in place after the Revolution, before the Constitution. And so the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, they had examples in all the states that they could look at and they could pull from. All right, so the point is really, I guess, when I just kind of real quickly go over and say, I'll give you these definitions and what happened before. It's just the founders, when they're sitting there and they're arguing all summer in 1787, trying to figure out our form of government, they just took pieces of all these different things, good and bad, and they whittled it down, and they would say, why don't we do this? And then all the other people would say, well, what happened when they did that 100 years ago or 200 years ago? And they were very well schooled in all of that history. Now, so that's just a real brief intro, and then the next one we will get to will be more sort of focusing on just the U.S. and sort of how we got started. But what I wanted to go back to this first question here, what is the role of government and why do we need it? Do we need it? All right. we used to have an old civics book at school, and it would say, "What is the role of government?" It would have all these blue headings with little sections, and they would say, "Provide services and look out for people." They would have all these different things, schooling and different things. But really, the role of government comes down to one thing, and that's just to protect the government. That's something we'll focus on a lot this year. The role of the government, did I say protect the government? The role of the government is protect the people. So the government's job is to protect the people. That's why we have it. And so it depends. When you say protection, to some people that means something different. Some it just means have a military so we're not attacked, and that's it. Some people think it means provide healthcare and schooling and housing and different things. But the government's job is to protect us, whatever that means in your mind. And so back in 2001, we were doing history, having a history class, and I remember I asked this question, and I said, "Well, do we need government?" And this one kid was real smart. He got a perfect score on his SAT, went to the University of Southern California. His name was Michael, and this kid Michael goes, "No, we don't need government." He goes, "Our world's just messed up because of governments." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, governments, so each country, they cause war because they invade each other, but they want resources, and the boundaries of the countries force them to fight over a limited supply of stuff." And he goes, "If we had no countries in the world, no governments, the world would be a lot better place." He goes, "There'd be no borders, and everyone could share basically." And I go, "What about money?" And he goes, "We don't need money in my world." He said, because the world would be much better off if we had no government, no armies, no leadership. All it was a bartering society where there's no borders and no money. He says if somebody made shoes and they needed corn, well, somebody else grows corn, so they would make shoes and they would trade and they would get corn. And someone else makes a chair and they would trade that for corn or whatever. And he goes, and then if someone ever got attacked, we'd all help each other. And so I said to him, and this may sound horrible hearing this, but I said to him, I said, "Okay, Michael, that'd be great. That'd be a great world. Let's say there's no government right now. That'd be awesome." And I go, "I'd walk over to you right now." And the kid was leaning back and he had this necklace on. And I go, "I'd walk over to you right now and I'd punch you in the face and I would take your necklace." And he looks at me and he goes, "No, you wouldn't." And I said, "Yeah, I would. I would walk over in the face. If there was no government right now, I'd walk over and I'd punch you in the face and I would just take your necklace." And he looks back and he looks around the room and he goes, "No." And I go, "Yes, I would. I'm telling you." I said, "I would walk over to you." I said, "If there was no one there to arrest me and punish me and fire me and ostracize me or whatever it would be, but especially the threat of punishment." Now, that's horrible for me to say. I don't know if I would really do that. But would people do that? If there was no government, if there was no military police force, would people walk over to someone and punch them and take their stuff? Yes, and we know that. One of the famous all-time quotes, from the Federalist Papers was essentially, to paraphrase, if men were angels, there'd be no need for government. But men aren't angels, and so we need government. And so that's the reality is we need the government to protect people from each other. And so when the Declaration of Independence was written, Thomas Jefferson talked about England, not Great Britain, not protecting its people. Again, you could argue whether they were or they weren't, but it really depends on what you mean by protection. Because some would say, well, when protests and riots were happening in Minneapolis and other places this summer, some would say, well, where were the police? How come they didn't protect Lights businesses that got windows broken? And downtown Raleigh on Glenwood, a lot of businesses got, or not Glenville, Fayetteville Street, I think it was. A lot of businesses had their windows broken, and the police didn't really do anything to stop them. And so people would say the police should be there. They should stop them. The government's job is to protect people. Well, others would say, no, the government needs to protect the other people, the people who are protesting. They need to have their rights protected. And so, they should be allowed to do that because so it really, so much of it depends on what you believe true protection is. Some of you would say free healthcare and free schooling and free heat and free homes. Who knows? Those are all important to protect people. And others would say, no, that's not. That's infringing in our lives and the way we live our lives and stuff. So some of you might say the government should just have a military and have a very small government, but a military and a police just to protect us. And everything else, that is excess. So anyway, so think about that a little bit. What's the role of government? I think it is protection, but it depends what you think qualifies as protection. So again, I have about 30 seconds left, and so I rushed through that a little bit. But I appreciate you guys paying attention, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.